Hello and welcome back to this Mintec market update video. I'm Marcel Goldenberg, Head of Proprietary Pricing, and I've got with me today Kyle Holland, who's our pricing analyst here at Mintec. You've joined the team just recently, covering oilseeds and grains, but of course it's been your bread and butter for quite some time already. You've been looking at the markets for quite some time, which is why we're very pleased to have you join the team now and be with us here. Now, the outlook for this video, really, the idea is that obviously as a soybean expert in particular, looking obviously across the other markets as well, and me look at the plant-based market with what we've been seeing recently, the WASDE report being very, very low on stocks last week when it came out, and some other issues we're seeing. We thought we could just put it together as one video, talk about the underlying, the soybean price, and then moving it into the derivative of it, so the isolate and concentrate on the protein level, to kind of really give you a good overview of why the price changes are currently happening and where it's coming from. So I've mentioned WASDE report quite low. Why don't we kick off with that and look at, obviously guys, you can see there behind me on the chart, you can see which numbers were published as well, but give us a little bit of commentary on that, please.
Absolutely, yeah. I know myself and Marcel and the rest of our colleagues here at Mintec were kind of discussing the report before it came out. We had a little bit of a sweepstakes going on. We did not expect the numbers, I don't think anyone got particularly close. Obviously we're talking about soybeans in this instance, so we're looking at 290 million bushels now coming up from the USDA in terms of US soybean stocks. Now this is pretty low. I think it's about a 5-year low if we're looking at a 5-year kind of average. Immediate impacts, as you can see from the graph, the CBOT shot up on Friday to roughly, I think it was about $10.85, $10.86, $10.87, that kind of range per bushel. So I think it's very, very interesting going forward. Bullish sentiment definitely came out from that report, and I think moving forward we'll have to see, if that continues. Moving on to kind of China, also obviously we're seeing huge exports from the US. In most of the 2021 crop, 40 million of that's gone already, 40 million metric tons. So that's a huge amount. That's roughly 3 times what we saw last year exported out already. Now, this is likely to continue as we see China kind of rebuilding their swine herd. As we know, numbers dropped back massively, 40-50% kind of destroyed in the African swine fever. So they're building numbers back up slightly slowly, it must be mentioned at the moment. I know Marcel mentioned to me that they, just yesterday, that 97% was kind of the ratio they were in that before. I think we'll see slightly less than that now. I've heard 95 from industry contacts. I think that's probably about right, depending on what happens in the future.
But then also, of course, with that increased demand from China, right, largely for US soybeans, right, that would potentially put a strain on the freight industry, the shipping industry, right? And I think that some of the higher pricing we're seeing at the moment is pricing in this anticipation of higher freight rates, lower ship availability. What can you tell us more about this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of industry contacts, I know Marcel has contacts in this area as well. In 2016, when we had another kind of large export to China, we saw kind of problems around logistics, problems around the rivers. We had delays in shipping, we had issues with shipping. Now, it doesn't take a crystal ball to think, we're having large exports. Could this happen again? It's certainly a possibility. Industry contacts telling me that this could be an issue moving forward.
Yeah, and it's currently being priced, right? It's one of these other factors of why prices are high at the moment. Very exciting. Now let's look towards obviously the European continent. Obviously, let's look towards the Black Sea. You've got obviously Ukraine as one of the big exporters there as well. It's certainly into the European market. What are you seeing and hearing here?
That's actually very interesting. Now, my contacts in the industry in Ukraine are suggesting that soybeans obviously naturally going to China because they have a big appetite at the moment for those. But obviously, I think what's worth mentioning is Belarus have come onto the scene a little bit. In particularly in the last 4 to 5 years, didn't have much of a crush capacity, wasn't really interested in importing soybeans. They grew some domestically, but then that would go into their kind of internal feed markets, etc. So more recently, we've seen refineries being built, which is a big move actually for them. We haven't seen too much of that over the European Union since this kind of, obviously we have big plants already, but this is kind of a new move, and I think that's quite important to mention. We've also saw that they're willing to almost outbid Chinese bidders at this point in time. So if Chinese, for example, are offering $500 a metric ton, they're willing to do $510, $520, just for an example. So I think we'll see certainly price being a major flare point. So China often buys on kind of a price basis. If the price is good, they'll buy, they'll stock up. But if you've got competition from people like Belarus and potentially more kind of globally, we could see the price be bullish continuing going forwards.
Okay, very interesting. Now, obviously, let's move this into obviously the derivative product of soybeans in particular, the plant-based protein that's just springing up everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, and of course, with Mintec, cover the Mintec benchmark prices for plant-based protein, soya and pea. You can see the soya price behind me here up until September. Now, it's really interesting because I mean, all of these bullish prices have been very recent. So what is currently going on in the market is that there's this price increase is currently just happening. We're filtering through. I think if you look at it from the derivatives part, and this is derivatives, I mean, the derivative product, the isolate and the concentrate, what you can really see here is that the costs here and the demand and supply for that hasn't really changed much over the last couple of weeks. But because the input is increasing in price so much, you can now see prices and herds that we hear in the market come through at much higher levels than where they were just in September. Now that's a very interesting one to follow, because up until now what the market really was that obviously you've got the soya protein, which is probably about 80% of the market share of the plant-based proteins. You've got about 10% maybe, which is the pea protein world. And then you've got the remaining 10% are, your lentils, your dals, your wheats, your whey, and whatever else proteins you can think about. So, but the pea started to grab more and more into the soybean pot. And, you could see that soybean price were actually coming off and weakening a little bit there. At the same time, pea protein prices were increasing. Now, I think we're seeing a mix so far in October where really soya prices are starting to come off a little bit, move higher. This is, of course, on the reasons that you've just explained, that the availability for soybean is actually not as well as it used to be. Pea, I think, so far seems to be coming under a bit of pressure downward. I think it's coming off a little bit. There were a couple of projects expected to come alive into Q4 that would kind of bring more supply into the market. Whilst it has been pushed into 2021 due to corona concerns, I think at the moment it looks like the pea price are going to stay in a stable manner from the market commentaries that we're hearing right at this second. And that's kind of the large update for the plant-based protein world, the soya protein. Very good to have you head on board for the first joint meeting we've had here. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more videos and updates from you here, and I'm very much looking forward to that moving forward. Obviously, if you've got any more questions to any of us, please reach out to us at pricing@mintecglobal.com. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.